over there. We did have the people who run the flagship, Marine Corps page, the at Marines, the official, Marine Corps page were there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talked to them too. Like, obviously General only had so much time. And we spent a lot of time on like introductions around the room, but when he had to walk out, like none of the rest of us had anywhere to go. So, we talked with the people who run that page and, social media in general for the Marine Corps, and like, you got to do better in delivering your messages. And I think we struck a couple of nerves because it was right after they had put out the Pride Month post with
Oh, yeah.
the bullets. Were like, look, we get it, but that doesn't cater to anybody actually in the Marine Corps, right? That's pandering to people outside the Marine Corps,
Mm-hmm.
right? Marines don't care about that. Like, we just want to be Marines. But when you start trying to highlight whether it's based on their race, ethnicity, their gender, their sexual orientation, or what they do in the Marines, like if you were to make all of your, social media messaging about like a specific MOS, then you're going to start isolating all the other MOSs. You just have to, like, you got to just make it about being Marines. And if you want to talk about the diversity or highlight the diversity, then include like a picture of a platoon or a whole section, because there's going to be that diversity in there, So we talked into that, but just in general, like, you got to start messaging about the force design. Like, you can't just keep putting out, pictures of boot camp or like some random operation and have like some basic little blurble in the caption. You have to put out information that the Marines will absorb. Like, stop targeting the civilian populace,
Mm-hmm.
target the Marines and inform the Marines of what's going on within the Marine Corps, because that's what you should be doing. But
Yeah, it's
so
I think it's one of those things where it's it's probably a difficult position for their social media person, because not only are they trying to do messaging for the military, one, you have to control the message. Like, if you're not putting information out there, or you're not controlling the message about your organization, then you're leaving it up to everybody else to control the message. And like we said before, there's a lot of people in the military with a lot of followers, and if they're putting out whatever they want to put out unimpeded, then the Marine Corps is no longer controlling the message, and now these people are, and that's obviously not a good situation they want to find themselves in. Your point about the Pride Month post, yeah, that caught a lot of flack, and I think uh, anyone that's having like an honest conversation, or having like you want to, we're looking at this seriously. The problem is, the whole point of going into boot camp and coming out of that experience is that you were broken down to a basic level, and all these little innate bullshit things like your race, your sex, your whatever shouldn't matter. None of that matters. It's all supposed to be one big team fight for the organization, and your individual characteristics don't fucking matter. We don't care that you have brown hair. Nobody cares that I'm left-handed. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just as innate of a characteristic as someone being black or white. I didn't choose to be left-handed. It just happened to me, right? It's and to say and the whole point is that when you start, and like the pushback that you're giving, when you start pointing out those individual characteristics and we make those like the highlight of one thing or another, you're doing exactly what you said. Is now you're leaving people back that are like, what the fuck? Why are we talking about this? Like, I thought we don't care about the individual. We're not supposed to be caring about the individual. We're supposed to be caring about the organization. And also, and you also got to look at, they're probably being told by the Department of Defense and their civilian leadership within that they have to make these posts. You know what I'm saying? That it's something that has to be done.
You got to toe the line, because at the same time, you don't want to seem like you're bigoted against anyone. So occasionally you're going to have to do some messaging. This is like, hey, like we don't care, like we really don't care. So yeah, you can be openly gay, or you could whatever it is, like. But then at the same time, when you also wait for like Pride Month to talk about it, or you know, Women's Appreciation Month or, you know, Black History Month. That's the only time you highlight it. Like, you're clearly just pandering and virtue signaling. You know, if you want to like put out this clear message that we value the team, we value being a family unit, but we understand that people are individuals, and you got to put this stuff out constantly throughout the year instead of just waiting for, you know, the opportune window to do it. And then you have to do it in a fashion where, again, like, we appreciate everybody that we have in the force, but we're here to be Marines. Like, what you do in your time is what you do in your time, and who you are. Like, hey, cool, everybody brings something to the table, but we're all Marines.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you got to find a way to get that message through, and they do. They absolutely like have their hands tied, and one of them was he was a captain. I forget what he said. He was active or reserve, but I mean, he's only there. It's a duty station.
Yeah.
He's like, you know, you got me right now, and he's like, in 2 years when I leave, you know, it's gonna be somebody else, and so that person's, you know, individual opinion is going to start taking a play, and you know what the messaging looks like on top of, you know, whatever the command says. And there are the other person who was a civilian, and you know, she was getting a little bit frustrated with us, and I think we kind of cornered them, so I don't really blame her for getting frustrated. They were trying to walk out, and all of a sudden, like, we just surrounded them. She was getting a little frustrated. And I can understand that, because she's like, look, you know, our hands are kind of tied, and, you know, our messaging is based off of like what we're seeing from the lower levels, because what they can't do, even though they run the flagship, like, hey, we are the @Marines page, they don't get to influence like the division pages, like 2 Mardiv and 3 Mardiv. Like, they don't really get to influence. Like, they can send suggestions through communication strategies. But, you know, if the map for the division CG is like, nah, you know, that's not really what the messaging I want to put out right now, then they just crumple up and throw away the headquarters suggestion, and they drive on with the messaging that they want to put out. That's, you know, they feel is more pertinent to their division or meth. So it's an interesting relationship they have between all the levels of, you know, the Marine Corps as in terms of the social media pages. But I mean, hopefully they got something out of what we told them.
Yeah, the Comstrat world is a difficult one, I think. You know, because they gotta get the messaging right. They gotta, you know, I don't know. It's just a strange world, and the whole. You know what? Really, here's a funny story about diversity in the Marine Corps. My air officer, when I checked into First Anglico, who's a Harrier pilot, he has a Hispanic last name, but he looks like a white dude, right? And he was saying when he finished like TBS or flight, maybe it was after flight school, something like it was early on in his career, but he was a pilot contract guy. The Comstrat guys, the communication strategy guys, contacted him, and they're like, "Hey, we're doing a series on diversity in the military. We're trying to get increase recruiting numbers within the Hispanic and African American communities to these officer jobs, you know, to be a pilot. We want you to come down, and we're going to do a photo shoot and all this stuff." And he's like, you know, like most people, like, I don't want to fucking do that. But it's like one of those things when it comes down, command's like, no, bro, go. And he got there, and they were like, oh, you're not, you know, Martinez enough. And he ended up not even going to do the photo shoot or anything like that, because he didn't look the part of the Hispanic person that they wanted to display. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, that's so crazy. Like, that, how is that not insulting? You know what I'm saying? Like, how are you going to look at a guy and be like, oh, well, are you fully, you know, like, you're not Hispanic enough for what we're trying to get at. And it's like, that's so fucked up, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's my son. My son is half Colombian, you know, but he's blonde hair, light skinned. So everyone's like, you're not Latino. And he's like, yeah, I am. Yeah.
Man, such a crazy thing.
It is funny how like how like all that works, you know, and people like trying not to be seen like bigoted or racist, end up being bigoted or racist, even if it's just a moment, you know. It is amusing sometimes.
It's just ridiculous. And this was in 2000. He told me about this in 2015, which means it probably happened to him around 2010 or something like that. That's probably maybe even earlier than that. So this is something that's been kind of going on for a while. They've been trying to increase the amount of minorities in like leadership positions for a long time, but they're just not getting I don't think they're getting the results that they want. So I'd like to pivot a little bit and talk about, so between the company that you started and Orion and stuff like that, what kind of training, who are you guys working with? Are you guys working with like law enforcement professionals? Are you working with like military guys? Like what kind of training are you guys getting into?